week at #1 on the New York Times. So I'm sure she needs no introduction, but is the foremost expert on menopause, changing life for all of us. Who has had their lives changed already? Oh my goodness. Okay, Dr. Haber, kick it off. What does everyone need to know, and why did you decide to dedicate your life to this and write a book about it?
So I was a basic OBGYN, very happy for most of it, in my practice, delivering babies and doing pap smears and, taking care of us through multiple phases of life. I didn't have a ton of menopausal patients when I was younger. Getting started, you tend to have babies with your patients who are aging together. So we're all kind of, in general, going through this phase of life together. And I was telling them things like, oh, just work out more and eat less. And, when they come in complaining of weight gain, and I was really terrified of hormone therapy. I didn't understand that the Women's Health Initiative had been walked back. So many of the, claims have been overestimated and the actual protected benefits had been, undersold. And I was going through a really rough time in my own life when I was going through menopause. I'd lost my brother, and I was grieving, and I was having horrific joint pain and night sweats and brain fog and not able to sleep and sleep disruption. And I gaslit myself. So I was grieving, and I just kind of attributed everything, which there was definitely a part of it, but it took me months and realizing my grief was getting better, that I was still feeling horrible and not sleeping. And when the hot flashes were just unbearable, I kind of treated hormone therapy like I treated an epidural, for myself. Like, we'll see how we do. And the act of getting an epidural was like throwing in the towel, like I wasn't strong enough. And it was the best freaking thing I've ever done in my life. If you've ever had one. So yeah, I was 3 centimeters, by the way. So 3 when I got an epidural. Like, we weren't supposed to get it till 4, but we lied. The nurse lied for me, and then we got it. And anesthesiologist. So that was me. So just that whole experience and transition, I really struggled with the 20-pound weight gain through the menopause transition. It was all in my midsection. I had been a thin person with thin privilege most of my life, most of my adult life, outside of pregnancy and college stuff, and could not get the weight off. And like, that was, if anybody ever read Galveston Diet, that was part of the initial part of my journey. But so I kind of took to social media to talk about that experience. And then that led to more and more questions about menopause in general. So instead, I'm a curious person. So instead of being dismissive, I was curious, and I would go and look things up and be like, wait, frozen shoulder actually is related to menopause. So I'd find an article and post about it, and 1 million people would go crazy on the internet. So most of what is in this book, like in the toolkit in the last section, was informed by you guys, telling me what you were going through and the symptoms that you had, that led me to go find research to support what you were saying. And the saddest part, really the crux of why I wrote this book is no one taught me this. And I know a lot of stuff. I'm really smart. And no one in the American Board of OB-GYN that recertifies us every year was saying, hey, this new menopause information is important. We spend 1/3 of our lives as menopausal people. And it's like our value in medicine plummets after reproduction. I love my children. I loved being pregnant and the whole experience, and miscarriages, and that's such a beautiful part of my life. But like, I'm not dead, and I want, and I thought, as soon as Galveston Diet was like birthed, I was immediately pregnant again, trying to get this book into the world, because that is what I felt like everyone was telling me, on social, write a book. There's too many videos for me to go through. Can't you just get it all together in one section? And so, very long answer to, a very simple question.
That's what it's for. That's good. I went through the line really quickly before and asked what the best part of this stage of life was. And I would say 75% of this tiny little sample size here said not caring as much what people said. What does that have to do with menopause? Tell me what the link there.
I think, and this is opinion, but just talking to so many people, and now I have a menopause clinic, and like we get to this point in our lives where if we don't take care of ourselves, we're gonna fall apart. And you learn how to prioritize. Like I have boundaries now that I've never had in my life, and I've never had a healthier relation, like it's so healthy. And I prioritize my own health. Like I'm putting my own oxygen mask on for my kids can make a meal. They can whatever. I mean, I love my children, but I just, and you're like your shit factor and the weight of other people's expectations just kind of like goes out the window. So, and that's really been the best part. I mean, so I'll be 56 in a couple of months. I'm the happiest I've ever been. This is the best part of my life. And I am healthier, better relationships, wealthier, better entrepreneur, badass, and I couldn't have done this at 40. I wasn't in that place in my life where I could have made that happen. And I want that for everyone. And whatever that looks like for you, like this doesn't have to be the end. And when I realized I was menopausal, it was like the world was dark for a minute, I was not excited about it. I was like, oh my God, ew, and I thought, and that was based on the old menopause. And this is the new menopause. This is a celebration. This is the best time of our lives, but this is a biopsychosocial upheaval for us, for a lot of us in multiple different ways. And but we can take control of this. And hopefully this book will be a guidebook for you guys at this part of our lives.
I didn't know until I read the book that there was even such a thing called post-menopause that we should be aware, like was a thing. Mm-hmm. It was just perimenopause or menopause, ...
Right. Well, menopause medically is 1 day. The 1 year, 1 day, the 1 year past your last menstrual period, that day is your menopause day. Happy birthday. Everything after that is post-menopause. And so forever, people only define menopause by having hot flashes and symptoms. But like our bones are not doing well. Our muscles are starting to deteriorate forever. And, part of that is aging. Yes, we're all aging, but these things accelerate in menopause. And like knowing this, and I just think menopause should be optional.
So have you figured out exactly how to do that?
There's some really so my daughter's here, poor Maddie. Hi, she's 20. So, my ovaries are dead. And so there's no way to resuscitate them, but I'm hopeful that for this generation that they're working on pharmacology to extend the shelf life of the ovary, not for pregnancy. I mean, maybe if you want that, but but for enough estrogen production to continue to keep your bones, your brains, and your hearts strong.
So hormone replacement therapy, as you mentioned, got such a bad rap for a while. But in the book, you extol the benefits. Tell us why this is something we all should consider.
So I don't think every woman will choose it. But I think every woman deserves a conversation, and that's not what's happening in most of your offices that you go to when you're looking for care. You're being dismissed, denied, and it's really a lack of education in the medical training system. And that is where on the advocacy level is where the menopause is working. It's to demand at the American Board, American College of OB-GYN, but this should not be dumped in the lap of the poor busy OB-GYN. We got to deliver babies and do pap smears and all the things. Like this is an all medicine problem. This is internal medicine and surgery and orthopedics. And, so the menopause is made up of psychiatrists, cardiologists, all of us have bonded together saying this isn't right. And that we deserve more and better and the funding and the research and the dollars and the brain power to come to us. So hormone therapy is simply replacing the hormones that your ovaries used to make. And why would we do that? Well, one, the acute symptoms, the hot flashes, the night sweats, the sleep disruption, the mental health changes, that stuff. So then we tamper down the immediate problem, and then you feel like you get your life back. Now we're going to try to protect you, the protected benefits, for the next 30, 40 years. So to keep your bones strong so you don't fall and break that hip and then you die. So that you decrease your risk of dementia. But it turns out you don't have a heart attack. You have a heart attack later than you would have otherwise. So we're all going to die. We haven't fixed that problem yet. But the fact of the matter is females live longer than males, 2 to 4 years, depending on which study you look at. We all know this. But we live
25% of our lives in poorer health than our male counterparts, and we're 3 to 4 times more likely to end up in a nursing home and requiring long-term care. So that last 10 years tends to be marked with deficiency and decline and you not being able to take care of yourself. And so when I have patients in clinic, that's what we're talking about. HRT is one tool in that toolkit, but it's not for everyone. So if that's not an option for you or you choose not to do it, then we have to double down on the other pillars of health. And that's what the toolkit is about: the nutrition, the movement, who's got a way to vest? Yeah. So, little hacks and tools and things that we can do to stay healthy longer.
This is not the time to reveal that I only walked 254 steps all of yesterday.
We all have that, we all have better days.
Like, did I even go to the bathroom? Oh my God. It was a rough day. Anyway, but I know that exercise is one of the things that you recommend. So noted. I was also really taken in the book when you said, just as you were starting to talk about now, about breaking your hip, that you can die within 3 years.
The stats, if you're over the age of 65, which is 9 years away from me, okay, and I fall and break my hip, even with surgical repair, I have a 29% chance of death in the first year and within the first year. If I'm not healthy enough for surgery, which happens to a lot of women, go follow Vonda Wright, then I have a 79% chance of death. And that year is marked with horrific decline and horrific, just a really, really tough last year of my life. So we can prevent probably 50% of that with really aggressive, HRT is definitely preventative. And I don't know why the U.S. Preventative Health Task Force has not recommended it. And I think it is a crime. It is preventative for your bones to decrease the deterioration. But there's other things here: the weight of vest, the resistance training, the protein, the creatine. We talk about all this in the book. These things we can make them much less likely with intervention, and the earlier you start, the better.
There's so many things, though, that are recommended for all of us. And we're all already busy doing all the things that we've been doing the rest of our lives. So of all these things to do and to start to make sure that we don't end a horrible rest of our lives, how do you know which ones to prioritize and which to make time for?
When I have a patient come in, we look at her, first of all, we look at her family history. What did your mom have? What did your aunts have? Like, what is your grandmother's? What is genetics pointing you towards? And we start working on those things first, because it is overwhelming. The book's filled with 9,000 things and 100 supplements and whatever. But like, what is bothering you? What's keeping you up at night? What acute things do we need to address so you can sleep every night? So you can mentally function at work. So, we fix the acute first, and then we start looking down the road of what are your personal risk factors and how are we going to address those?
Okay, that works. We'll start there. And as you said before, you are not everyone's doctor. You are.
I'm not licensed in the state of California to practice medicine. So, yeah.
How does it feel at this stage in your life, which you really at any stage in life, to become a celebrity in your field? What is that like to have over 1 million followers hanging on your every word and knowing that you're like a leader in this whole thing? How do you feel?
So it's to be a social media person who becomes famous on that route, it's very lonely, because I am literally sitting in my bed like this with a research article that stimulated me that morning, trying to make something. So it's not like I'm in a room full of people or I'm on a stage talking. I mean, this is rare for me, really, not this week or last week, but the book launch. But in my everyday life on social, I am alone, doing this alone, and I'm sending stuff out into the world. I don't know what's going to happen to it. So it's a little bizarre, to all of a sudden walk into a space or walk through the airport and people recognize you. So Annabeth probably does it all the time. So she's an actress. So, it's just kind of really surreal. And it's funny when my husband, he tells me, for all the women who were brave enough to walk up to you at the airport to say hello, or, wherever we are, there's 10 more who are too scared to do it. So watch what you do in public, people are watching you. So it is kind of surreal. And to have a book come out as the #1 bestseller in the New York Times, I was so anxious and nervous. My husband took me to Mexico. Plus, we were trying to detox from New York and all the pre-launch stuff we were doing. If you followed me, I was in Vegas and New York and then Chicago, and then I got to go home. Then I got sick. So we, I put a mask on and we went to the beach in Cancun, and it was there that I found out that, and it was my friends, the Holderness family. Kim Holderness texted me the like secret list that comes out from New York Times. She's like, "Did you see it?" And I was sitting, having sushi with my husband at our hotel, and I saw it, and it was just that was like the moment that I was like, it's making a difference, like I don't care how many books we sell, but like this is a message that this is important. This message is important. And that, the editors of the New York Times also thought it was important to put us on the list. So, but that we'd sold enough books to be able to do that.
What do you think your brother would say?
So, I've lost 3. So the oldest when I was 9, and I have very cloudy memories of him. And then Bob in 2015, and then Jude in 2020, and then my dad in 2021. And so a lot of this is all part of that journey as well. And I talk to them all the time. When I was in Mexico, like sitting there like, oh my God, this happened, and wow. And, I could just feel them with me and just so proud. Bob, the one who was like over the top, and he would have been fussing over my hair, my makeup, and my outfits. And, and, Jude would have just been screaming from the sidelines, and, my dad. So it just, I know that they're there, and I know that they're proud, and it's a little sad. So
it's amazing what you're doing.
So yeah,
it's amazing. Oh, so then how do you know? How do you know that it's not grief? I mean, I know this goes back to the beginning of the book, but grief and trauma therapists would say that a lot of these things that you described are also grief. So how do we tease it all apart?
So when my patients come in, so for me,
and
it was
so sorry.
Oh,
I am
no,
so
it's okay.
sorry for your loss.
It's okay. I knew the grief was getting better, but I was not getting better. Do you know what I mean? Like I could finally, it took 6 months to realize that I wasn't crying every day on the drive home from work, and I didn't get therapy, and I didn't do all the emotional work throughs that I did later. But I didn't do the work I needed to do, but I was getting, I could feel the grief lifting, and I was still feeling so terrible. So, when patients come in, the first question, I'm like, when's the last time you felt good? Mm-hmm. And when's the last time you felt, because a lot of the times they're like, I just don't feel like myself. I can't put a finger on it, but I just don't feel like myself. Or I'm just not as resilient, or I'm more anxious, or I'm more irritable, or whatever. I'm like, let's go back to when you felt good. And when you had the world by the horns, and like you could handle the stress, all the things were okay. And so we walk back to that moment. Now tell me what's happened since then. And we go through, has anything changed? I have the usual stress, nothing new. Or sometimes they have had something tremendous happen in their lives, and we kind of work through that. Hot flashes are pretty diagnostic. And that's kind of why we've always defined the severity of your menopause by your hot flashes, because we really can't blame it on anything else. Fever, you'll have you'll get hot, and tuberculosis, and we can rule that out pretty easy. So, but there's very few things that give you the very characteristic hot flashes at this age, and that is why we've really defined menopause by that. And all 90% of the very small amount of research that we had has been in pharmacology to stop a hot flash, and nothing else.
I read this book, Blank, about a menopausal woman who is not exactly me, but we are very similar. And in it, there's a store that she wants to open called Flash, where she would just hand out like chunky necklaces and like waistless dresses and towels. So if anybody wants to start that store, go ahead. You can take it.
Flash. That's cute.
Anyway, well, I know we want to open things up to questions soon, but what is your vision of a life where menopause is something we control, where we don't all have dementia and need that extra care being taken, that 30% of our lives or whatever? Paint a picture of that sort of Barbie-esque alternate world.
I think I dream about a time when everyone is menopause informed, your partners, your loved ones, your whatever. We know as much about menopause as we do about puberty. And everyone is prepared, and they know what to look for, because what's happening now is the gaslighting and the being blindsided. And how many of you said, or who have read the book, said, I wish I would have had this at 35, so that, we have there's more books coming out. But that there's this, everyone is prepared and ready, and it's not hitting you like a truck, and you're so scared, and you go through months or years of questioning yourself and your motivation, and is this really real, or am I going crazy? which is what's happening now. And so you start getting screened at 35 at your healthcare provider. Are you having these symptoms? Just check these boxes. These are little sheets. All that you fill out when we go to the doctor, I have to fill it out too. You know what? There should be a perimenopause, menopause screening. Check. Easy, you know, because we don't have good blood work to diagnose perimenopause.
And you have it in there. We can, just like rip it out.
Yeah, rip it out.
You'll have to get another book for every doctor.
We have them online,
Which
on
is
our
very
website.
smart. Why not just like kick it? Why not just say, okay, I'm done. I'm gonna just go back to being like, what is driving you to do all of this?
Because I can make a difference in the world, and it's so powerful. And I just feel like this is where I'm meant to be. I mean, I loved delivering babies, and I swear to God, if they came between 8 and 5, I would probably still do that. And my babies came in the middle of the night, so you know, my doctors were a victim as much as anyone. But I'm more effective as a healer now than I think I've ever been. I'm touching more lives now. And this is a generation that has been dismissed medically for most of our stuff, unless you have a heart attack or you break a leg, you know? And so just being able to have any influence in this space and realize I'm not smarter than it. I'm very smart, but I'm not, you know, like there's way smarter people getting PhDs and all that, you know, but like this is my gift. This is my unique set of gifts. I didn't predict it. I did not see it coming, but this is what happened. And I'm going to go with it. I'm going to run with it. So,
And we are all going to follow. Except maybe we're not going to go so fast. we're gonna be in there with our weighted vests, dragging ourselves behind you. Anyway, questions. Yes. Oh, and to preface the questions, again, she's not your doctor, so we'll keep them broad. If the question goes on too long, I'm going to cut you off. And if it's really inappropriate, I'm not going to let you ask. How about that?
no pressure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I have a question. You're not my doctor, but you have changed my life already. Thank you. I'm 43. I started feeling really crazy like 6 months ago. Found you on Instagram. Like one of my questions was going to be, how do you do your social media, or who does it? But you do it yourself. That's amazing. My husband thanks you.
I don't try to overdo it. I just literally just go, oh, I found this cool article. Hello, hi.
It's amazing, and your reach. So when I first found you, I was like, okay, I told my husband, I have to go to Galveston. And he's like, why? I'm like, I'm going to go see this doctor. I know you think I'm crazy, but she has a clinic. But I ended up doing MIDI health. And so one question I have is, what do you think of like MIDI health and alloy? And pros and cons.
So I mentioned 3 of them in the book, and these are ones that I've vetted. So we're talking about telemedicine companies because I like them because they're all, the 3 that I mentioned are all female founded by women who got screwed over by the healthcare system and saw there's an opportunity here and we want to fix this. So MIDI, Alloy, and Evernow are 3 that they don't pay me to talk. You know, I have vetted them. I trust them. I've looked through their protocols. You know, I prefer you find someone, but where they're just hard to find. I mean, you only have a 10% chance, literally, of being able to walk into a menopause informed provider's office and get care. That's evidence-based. So these companies kind of sprung up realizing until we could train up all the docs, you know, in how to take care of a menopausal patient, then we need, here's something else, telemedicine.
Yeah, and telemedicine is so much more available now.
Yes.
Amazing.
So MIDI takes insurance. So, and if you go to the Menopause Empowerment Guide on our website, if you go to Insta or TikTok and you go to my link in bio, you can download it for free. It's 14 pages of stuff. And it has a side-by-side comparison of those 3 companies. There are new ones popping up all the time. There's a couple I don't like, but for legal purposes, I'm just not going to say their names.
Okay. My experience with MIDI was great.
But
I was like,
rhymes with Monona. And so that I question, you know, the legitimacy of their mission.
Okay.
But these 3, I know the people who started them. I love them.
Yes, next question.
Hi, for bone density, I'm sure you've written all about it, but is there like a preferred other than HRT? I wanted to read more about it, but other than HRT, is there
Yeah,
one of
so-
them like affinity? And then the second part is, are there specific studies for weight training? How much that actually helps to build?
So, okay, so for osteoporosis, I've dug and dug and dug through the literature. Most is done on, so we have studies that NIH kind of type studies, meaning non-big pharma, where they go into nursing homes, they find the patients with, because that's a really capital audience, they find the patients with osteoporosis, osteopenia, and then they put them through different protocols. These are small studies, because it's very expensive to do this. But they've done weighted vests, they've done creatine supplementation, they've done the vibratory plates, which no one has. You know, remember the old, our moms did. And so they've done weight training. So we don't have a weight protocol, right? Like you need to do this much amount of weights and these particular exercises. All we know is that women who strength train have better bones. That musculoskeletal unit works together. And so they've taken these 60, 70, 80-year-old ladies into the gym and done deadlifts and bench presses and all the things, and their bones get stronger. Creatine 5 grams per day was with weight training is additive, okay? The weighted vest is, the weighted vest puts pressure and stimulates the axial skeleton. So the weighted vest has weights on the front and back, so you're getting that pressure like from your shoulders down. And it also gets your hips as well. I don't love the rucking packs because that's a more muscular thing. It's all going on your back. So, and you only need 10% of your body weight to get started. So I started with an 8, it was way too light. Like if you're in decent shape and you exercise, I would not do an 8-pound, like go up to 10 or 12. And so my husband is all into it now. So we have 8, 10, 12, 15, 20. So, you know, we have hooks in the garage where they go. But, you know, I'm a big fan of the weighted vest. It's a great hack. Yes, you burn more calories, but you're stimulating muscle and bone. So decent studies on 65 plus showing improvements in bone density. There's also a specific bioactive collagen. Full disclosure, I do sell this one. I was so excited when I read the study. I was like, it's our COO. I was like, we got to make this for our followers. So it's called Fortibone. Multiple companies sell it, so you don't have to get it from me. But it has been shown. They studied it in osteopenic, osteoporotic women. They followed them for 5 years doing DEXAs every year. And they weren't on any of the other pharmacological bone building medications like the Protea, the shots, and the, Fosamax and whatever. They didn't have chronic metabolic disease, and they followed them for 5 years. And we know what happens when you don't do anything, and they saw statistically significant improvement in their bone density. So I feel like, I do everything, so I recommend do the creatine, do the Fortibone, we call it skin and bone in our, because we have an extra thing in it for skin. And do the weight training, eat the adequate protein, and it's all important. So also they showed that the WHI, which I love to talk about, because it's just data, right? It's just numbers. And so there's lots of information coming out of it. It's actually really positive. And so they looked at frailty scores and protein intake in women who had the highest quartile of protein intake, like 1.5 to 1.8 grams for every kilogram of lean body mass, had much lower frailty scores just by eating more protein. So these are all the things I counsel my patients about, besides HRT, which is insanely preventative for osteopenia, osteoporosis.
You would favor that over
All of it.
okay.
If you have osteopenia or osteoporosis, I recommend it all. All of it. Yeah.
My daughter is 20 as well. What should they be doing?
Strong over skinny. Stop trying to look a certain way. That needs to stop. Nutrition over calories. Stop counting calories and worrying about it's gonna make me fat. Like worry about it's gonna make me strong. It's gonna make me healthy. That's easier said than done because this generation's still under a tremendous amount of pressure to look a certain way. What else do I tell you, baby? I'm like exercise, yeah, like weight training over just cardio. So those are the two biggest things. And taking care of yourself, prioritizing your health, your needs, educate yourself, get that degree. If you choose to be a stay-at-home mom, I fully support that, but have a backup plan. If that doesn't work out for you. These are the things we talk about at our house.
I just want to say, obviously, I'm so proud of you because I feel like you are unapologetic about your knowledge, your intelligence, your success, the ability to also be an entrepreneur, which is important and should be acknowledged. But really what you're doing is making it so accessible for so many of us. So you could also say that you're still birthing women, right? That's a new phase. My question for you is, how are you finding it? I mean, I know about the menopause, and I think all of you are amazing. Are you finding a lot of resistance?
Yes. So yes and no. Thank God for the menopause, because when I first started doing this, I felt very alone. And I felt like the establishment of the old menopause, like the WHI researchers and people in certain societies, medical societies, like the, were just very like, she's just aging, and when you read Eleanor Cleghorn's beautiful book, The Unwell Woman, and when you read Invisible Women and just how we are not little men with breasts, DC Sims work, Gabrielle Lyons work, like, it's mind-blowing to me that I went through 12 years of medical stuff, training, whatever, and then 20 years of clinical practice, or 15 good ones, before I realized we're not helping us at this age, not really, We're not helping women to get on their best course. We are ending up frail and demented or having heart attacks earlier than we really should have, and I feel like and I'm not going to apologize for it. So the resistance I've gotten. So then I start finding the menopause, and now I find people who are on the team. We're all saying the same things, and orthopedic surgeons and cardiologists and psychiatrists, and we're all like, whoa, we're not doing this right at this age. So then you have oh, thank God, so then there was a really big article that came out in the Lancet, it's a big medical journal, penned by some of the old WHI researcher team. And basically saying that the headlines were, we got a hold of it before it was announced. This is embargoed, but we could all share it. We couldn't talk about it in public. And the headline was, menopause is being over-medicalized. I'm like, when 4% of women are on HRT, how is that possible over-medicalization?
Right.
And the theme, and then they're like, we need a balanced conversation around menopause. But when you read the between the lines, I mean, I had to go to bed for 24 hours. I was like, how could they do, this is the Lancet, which is basically like New England Journal for the UK. It's a huge, and I was like, how did they publish this? It was a 4-part treatise. Even the mental health stuff was disgusting, how you would treat, using cognitive behavioral therapy, which I think is a great form of therapy, to treat hot flashes. If you just change your perception of a hot flash, it'll get better. And I'm like, what the fuck are these guys? And I'm like, this is what some poor little family medicine doctor's gonna get this and go, well, okay, I really can't help her, go get therapy. I'm like, so the menopause said no. And we got together and I spent 3.5 weeks writing, with the team, penning a rebuttal. And the Wall Street Journal said no, and the LA Times said no, and we just kept knocking on doors until Ms. Magazine produced it. The Lancet authors flipped out so bad that they wrote a rebuttal to our, you can look it up in Ms. Magazine because it was beautiful, and we had medical journal articles, and we're just as smart as they are. And we're not gonna let our people suffer. And they basically were like, HRT, really, you could probably get through it without it, and it should just soldier on, you'll be fine, And I'm like, no talk about the cardiovascular protection, no talk about the osteoporosis protection, no talk about the mental health protection, especially in perimenopause. And we said no, and we had 280 signatures from some of we are boots on the ground clinicians who are actually seeing patients, and the people who wrote this, by and large, are PhDs, crunching numbers. And it's a big difference when you are sitting in front of a sobbing woman day after day after day, trying to help her get her life back together. And you read this article and you are like, no, I'm not going to put up with this. And I think Oscar Wilde said it best, to get a man to change his mind, and I'm paraphrasing, but his job depends on him not changing his mind. So they are kind of entrenched in this, and they build careers on this data. And we're like, I'm sorry, no. We're better than this. The data's been walked back. It's for every point they made, we had counterpoints and more recent articles, very big data to make a narrative that you should just suck it up. And there's really nothing you can do, and your life is fine. And this was not our clinical experience as boots on the ground, sitting in front of patients day after day. So we wrote the rebuttal. They wrote a rebuttal to our rebuttal. It was fact checked by Ms. Magazine, and they had to retract it. So yeah.
I think my question actually follows really nicely on this discussion, which is doctors are very busy and they are maybe seeing things like that aren't entirely accurate or in some cases wrong. And then there are very few menopause expert clinicians across the country.
Right, 1,200.
And if one cannot use MIDI or Alloy or one of those telehealth, for whatever reason, it's more complicated, they want to see someone in person, whatever, how do you recommend we have that conversation with our doctor or our clinician to advocate for ourselves in the face of that, oh, it's okay, dear, or that's just, you're at that age,
So,
or
you know,
whatever they tell you.
I have online resources, you know, you want to fight science with science. And so two of the most powerful things, the position statement from the Menopause Society on hormone therapy and the American Heart Association's treatise on cardiovascular disease and the menopause transition are two of the key articles to print out and hand to the doctor. And using words like, I know you're really busy. I don't know if you've had a chance to see this yet, but this is really important stuff. And go in with a plan. Go in with like, I would like to try this medication and give me 3 months and let me see how I do. Like, take the thought process away from the doctor because they're busy and they haven't had time to go get certified and keep up and you know, and it could be an internist, it could be family medicine, it could be a nurse practitioner, you know, doesn't have to be your OBGYN. And likely because of the way I was a program director for 15 years, we weren't trained. I know what the curriculum said. It was not menopause friendly.
Is there a link with the new weight loss medications, Mounjaro?
Yeah, so okay, we see, so premenopausal women in general, they've looked at the MRIs, they have visceral fat level, of 8% of their body fat is visceral fat. Who knows, everybody knows what visceral fat is, you follow me, okay, intra-abdominal fat, it's inflammatory, it's fat. Go through the menopause transition, not a single change in diet and exercise, it jumps to 23% by the time you're menopausal, okay? With no changes in diet and exercise. That is irrefutable. This drives the eco people crazy, and the trainers who all did, you know, calories in, calories out. So, undeniable fact. Doesn't happen to men. They have a longitudinal, just very easy. We go, whoop. And so women on HRT are less likely to have that happen if they start early enough. And it will help with the reversal process. You still have to eat the right foods and do the things, right? Do all the anti-inflammatory things. GLP-1s, which I think can be a very powerful tool for patients. They're not for everyone, neither is HRT. I don't think they're being utilized the right way in a lot of clinics. I think I've seen patients coming in who are just given the medication and sent out the door. Go lose weight, bye. We spend an hour counseling our patients on protein intake, resistance training, the risk of muscle loss. We measure their muscle mass throughout their treatment option. I think that's probably the healthiest, safest way to do it. And women who are on HRT and a GLP-1 lose 30% more weight. Data's out. So, but not all weight loss is healthy. So, and you don't want to sacrifice muscle to get to a number on the scale. Never, ever, ever. Your muscle mass is going to protect you against falling and breaking that hip, against insulin, you know, against developing diabetes, and it's your basal metabolic rate. That's how many calories you burn at rest. So calories are still important. They're not everything.
Last question.
So what is your thought process on supplemental, herbal supplemental? And then like, is there the reason?
So no supplement will bring your ovaries back to life, okay? And this is a doctor who sells supplements. So supplements are meant to supplement a healthy diet. So the herbals, Menopause Society did a full review on non-pharmacologic,
Yeah.
herbs and things for. And they really found very little clinical evidence to support widespread use. Now, occasionally a patient will tell me, I got better with ashwagandha or my hot flashes, there's little pockets of maybe it might help a little bit here and there, but it is not replacing your estrogen. It is not causing your testosterone to aromatize to estradiol. It is that is a fallacy. And so we see, whose social media is bombarded? My social media is only menopause. And so it's like, oh, lose 20 pounds or get your libido back. My husband, I can't leave him alone. And I'm like, girl, no. If it seems to you, it probably is. So when I talk about supplements with patients, we're looking at nutritional deficiencies. So, we look at how much fiber is she getting in her diet per day. Fiber is critical for your health, and we look at the vitamin D. 80% of my patients are deficient in vitamin D. 80% of my patients are having aberrations in their cholesterol just from being menopausal, no changes in diet and exercise. Fiber is huge to be helpful there. So we're looking at, turmeric can be really helpful for some of the osteoarthritis and the inflammation that we suffer with through the menopause transition. So I recommend creatine because of the bone, muscle, and some people say brain. I don't have enough data to say, but definitely muscle and bone, creatine is your friend.
But the Bonafide or Serenol or those type of
There's not enough data, to really support that, to give it a try. And if you're,
Is there
but nothing's replacing estradiol in the body.
Okay. So then, is there a age range for HRT? I was
That's a great
recently
question.
told I couldn't go on it because I'm not 50 yet.
Oh my God. Okay. So you don't have a menopause. So there's no magical thing that happens at 50. The minute you have a single symptom, you're a candidate. But there's room for discussion about the prophylactic benefits of supporting your estrogen through perimenopause. And the biggest thing we see is mental health. Because the brain, so I just went to a menopause symposium in Chicago. That was Let's Talk Menopause. And they had a whole section, so we had 4 sections. So Sharon Malone and I did HRT. And then they had brought in 2 psychiatrists and 2 neuroscientists to talk about what happens to our brains when our hormones change. So each month, when you're healthy and doing normal reproductive cycles, we have a very EKG-like rise and ebb and flow of our hormones. It's very predictable. On day 14, you're doing this. On day 18, you're doing this. LH, FSH, testosterone, progesterone, and estradiol, right? And then in perimenopause, we reach that critical egg level where the signals from the brain aren't really talking to the ovary anymore very well because we're down to 6 eggs, and it's a lot harder to get the ovulation going. So we end up in this very hormonal zone of chaos. The brain hates chaos. And so we see horrific changes and 40% increases in depression, anxiety, executive functioning, ADD symptoms. And these scientists were telling us that estrogen therapy is better than an SSRI, especially in peri, for depression. Way better outcomes. So starting early.
And is it ever too late?
So we have to talk about benefits. So cardiovascular benefits looks like your best bet is in those first 10 years. Okay, we start losing some of the cardiovascular benefit after that. So say I have a patient who's 62, she's never been on hormone therapy, so that you don't have to stop at 60. If you're killing it and I'm my guy with an estradiol patch, by the way. And but if you're still healthy and no cardiovascular disease, no risk factors, and we're not stopping you if you want to keep going. Okay. So, but say you've never been on it, you were one of those people who got left behind. Okay. And now you're like, what about me? Certainly, if you're still having symptoms, we're going for it. Okay. But we don't want to put estrogen on top of atherosclerotic cardiac disease. It might make it worse. So I'm doing a big cardiac workup for these patients. We're doing cholesterol, a calcium cardiac score, maybe an ultrasound of her carotids if we're worried about potential for stroke. So, all of these things, we're making sure she's healthy so we can keep the health going. Estrogen is better at prevention than cure for cardiovascular and later dementia. So Alzheimer's, if you have the ApoE4 gene, women who were started on hormone therapy in perimenopause have bigger brain volumes, better cognition scores. So they're high risk for Alzheimer's. Yeah, that came out of Sweden, somewhere in Scandinavia. So yeah. So these are the things, like, we get so excited in the menopause and we start talking about like the protective benefits that you guys are not being allowed to be a part of the discussion and making a decision for yourself on what's best for you. And that's what we're fighting for.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Are you doing a conference in January?
Yes, in
Okay.
Galveston. Yeah. So January 18th and 19th in Galveston, not on a cruise ship this time, it's on land. So we are hosting a menopause conference. We're bringing in over 20 of the menopause are coming, 2 days, all your questions answered, breakout sessions, like, yeah, and it's gonna be a digital option as well. So, but we'll have room, Jen?
Oh, you can do it online?
Yeah.
You can do it online.
Yeah, we'll have it online as well.
700 people, not $700.
700 people. No, we're gonna make the sponsor pay a lot,
Okay,
so.
let's do, so there's time for
Is
signing.
there a, if you're taking like the lowest dose of HRT and your symptoms have like been addressed for the most part, are you still getting the benefits?
We don't know. So you mean like cardiovascular and brain protection? Wouldn't that be great to know? All we know is that, and most of the cardiovascular protective benefits really came out of the WHI. Those women were on Premarin, 0.65. So all we know is she was on it or not. And she was on it in whatever form or whatever the studies go back and look. No one's checking levels. And no one's like saying who's on what dose or whatever. Those studies are hard, but we're worth it, right?
Yeah.
So what I would like to see is go in looking at different formulations, patch, pill, ring, gel, creams, whatever, and like where are we, can we stratify how they're doing cardiovascularly based on what, and were we checking levels, and what was her estradiol level to see what is the maximum benefit? We just don't know. We just know if you're on it, you're better off cardiovascular than not.
There's one last question.
Yes.
One last question. So how can you definitively tell or when HRT would be helpful? Let's say in your 20s and 30s, you've had PMS, maybe you're ovulating, maybe you're not, maybe you're estrogen dominant, maybe you're not, like you've had issues up and down, and then like, well, where does your menopause really start? Like how do you define the difference between young and now there's something else going on?
Right. Unfortunately, again, we need more studies. We don't have a good blood test in perimenopause to say you are perimenopausal, and so many of the symptoms look like other stuff. So when I have a patient coming in and she's like, something's not right, okay, I would have to rule out I'm ruling out hypothyroidism or autoimmune disease. I'm doing a lot of blood work, nutritional deficiencies, anemia. We're doing an iron workup because those are the things I want to make sure we're not missing before we start talking about therapy. So most patients with PCOS now are offered a birth control pill to cover their symptoms, and that's what I was offered, given, and actually did pretty well on it. Okay, because we are trying to suppress the ovary so the big difference between birth control pill and menopause hormone therapy is dose. Birth control, hormonal contraception was developed to stop ovulation, so that's like up here. Okay, we need this much to send a signal to the brain saying, shut it down, we're good. Because in order to ovulate, remember the hypothalamus talks to the pituitary, sends all these chemical signals to the egg. So the ovary's just sitting there waiting to be told what to do. And in PCOS, the patients are, like myself, I had the thin kind, so there's like the heavier kind, the thin kind. We're insulin resistant. It's basically the pathophysiology of that. And so all that extra insulin is making our ovaries more resistant to the signals coming from the brain. That's how it works. And so, it's complicated, and most docs don't have enough knowledge to be able to. And so menopause hormone therapy and perimenopause is the lower dose, not enough to suppress a natural ovulation, but enough to tell the brain, calm down, we're good. Like, there's enough here to keep you going. You don't need to send all these crazy pulsatile, super high symptoms, which is why we see these dramatically increased levels of perimenopause of estrogen, and these women are getting diagnosed with estrogen dominance, which is not a medical term, it's a marketing term. So, medically, people having oligoovulation or anovulation, like infrequent ovulation or no ovulation, can be due to multiple things: hypothalamic suppression, starvation, super thin, PCOS, or perimenopause, and it's really tough sometimes to tease out. So I actually have a blog about that on our website. I have a little side-by-side chart with check, which things happen in which disease, but there's a ton of overlap.
And just what's something we should tell the people who love us if we're going through menopause? What should they know?
So it's like, and the two male podcasts I was on this week were all asking the same thing. And so, how do we, and the best patient visits I have are when the partners come, because they're not coming to like police the visit. They're coming because they want to help and want to understand what's going on. So I end up talking to them more, about what to expect and what she's going through and legitimizing her symptoms. So I think, shameless plug, but, read, educate yourself, or watch a few of the videos. Like, this is going to affect her biopsychosocial in ways she did not expect and you won't expect. And being a good support person through this process is going to take some understanding of what's happening to her on a larger scale. So, and I can't stress that enough, because it can affect her, how she treats you, your relationship, your sexual wellness, all of it. It takes, a lot.
Does anybody feel better than when they got here?
Yes.
Okay.
So is it too late if you had the hysterectomy already?
Uh-huh.
Is it too late to hear on?
No, not at all. Did you have your ovaries removed as well?
I just had an ultrasound yesterday, and I was told that my right and left side ovaries are not visualized.
So
So I don't know.
So you can probably pull your operative report. How old are you now?
I'm 52, I'll be 53 this year.
And when was your hysterectomy?
My hysterectomy was done in February of 2006.
So they probably left your ovaries behind,
Yeah.
because you would have been having hot flashes and all the things. So you are probably fully menopausal if you just have shrink ovaries. They shrink after they spit out all their eggs. And, menopause is the end of your eggs, right? So we're born with all of our egg supply, and then they get old and deteriorate, and we ovulate them out and whatever. So most likely you are fully menopausal. Simple blood test can rule that out.
I keep my gynecologist just matched.
Can't practice in California.
No, worry about it.
You're
Yeah,
not in menopause.
worry about it.
I
So,
said, I've been in menopause since 2007. No, you haven't.
so
I said, yes, I have, because I know.
Yeah, find a new doctor.
you know the change. So yeah, you are. It's not too late, and you're the perfect candidate. You're going to have the cardiovascular protection and the brain protection, because you're so young. So
Okay, to be continued. Yes? Yeah, okay. We're gonna do some signing. Right?
Yeah,
Are you ready
let's
to sign? Anybody want their book signed?
Yes.
Is that a little too rough? Thank you so much for coming in.